Good morning, students. Good morning to all. And last day we have started the third lesson, the production analysis, and we have studied about the factors of productions and the characteristics of factor of productions. So today also just we will remind about what we have studied on last day, and we will go to the new chapter. Production analysis. So production is a process of using various material and immaterial inputs in order to make output for consumption. So production is a process of using various material and immaterial inputs in order to make output for a consumption. If you want to consume any of the commodities, we have to take the undertaking of productions. If there is no production, we will not able to consuming any of the commodities. But how can we produce? So if you want to make a finished commodity, we have to using the various material like a raw materials. So if we are using the raw materials as a inputs only, we can bring a finished commodities. So the production is also creates the well-being of the humans. Next, we have studied about the factors of productions. Factors of productions mean some of the factors must be used into production analysis. So the land, labor, capital and organization. The four factors considered are called as a factors of productions. Because already I told you, so this any of these four, without any of these four, we can't produce any of the commodities. So the land, without land, we can't produce any of the crops and even in the industrial sectors. So like that the labor. So without the labor, we can't produce anything. So the capital and the organizations. So without these four factors, we can't produce any of the commodities. So the four factors is considered as a factors of productions. So in these factors, last day we have studied about the land. So land is the original source of all material wealth. Even if you are taking the agricultural sector or the industrial sector, the land is very much important. So in ordinary sense, the land refers to the soil or the surface of the earth or ground, right? But in economics, land means all gift of nature owned and controlled by human beings which yield an income. If a land which has the sources and if is the capacity to earn the income, that only is considered as a land. Because we will use more land, but all the land will not bring the income. So in which land will able to bringing the income, that is considered as a land. And the economic prosperity of a country depends on the richness of her natural resources. Because on the basis of the prosperity of the land only will bring the economic GDP. So the characteristics of land. So what is the characteristics of land mean? The land is a primary factor of production. Land is a primary factor of production because even the agricultural sector and the industrial sectors, without the land we can't produce anything. Even if the industrial sector want to build construct any of the building, the land is important. So like that in this agricultural sector also, without the land we can't produce any of the crops. Next, it is the free gift of nature. The land is the free gift of nature because we can't produce the land for any other purpose. So we can use the land for producing any of the commodities. And land is the passive factor of productions. Land is the passive factor of productions means we can't do anything on the land. Next, no cost of production. So there is no cost to produce the land. So already, so it is the free gift of nature. so we can't produce. So like that, there is no cost of productions for land. Next, the land is a fixed in supply, and it is the inelastic in supply also. So in a 1 acre land, how much crops we can produce, that is the fixed supply in their land. Okay, because when we are producing, when we are making a more fertility or the more inputs, so we can produce we supply or more. Next, land is permanent. So land is the permanent properties. Okay, so it will not be immorals. Next, the land is immovable. Land will never move from one place to another of the place. Next, the alternative uses. So we can use the land for more purposes. So as for example, if we have some of the land, so we can cultivate any of the crops. Otherwise, we can construct any of the building to establish the industries. Otherwise, we can build a home. Next, the subject to law of diminishing returns. The subject to the land is the subject to law of diminishing returns. Law of diminishing returns mean, so when we are using the land as continuously or in course of time, so the productivity of land will be diminished, will be decreased. Okay. Okay, students. Next one of the factor is labor. The labor is the active factor of productions. Labor is the active factor of productions. It is not like a land. So because the labor can able to think or bring the innovative or inventive, or it will be doing as a very activity. So the labor is the active factor of productions. So the labor means manual labor or unskilled work. The labor means the manual labor or unskilled work. In economics, the term labor has a wider meaning. It means any work undertaken for securing an income or reward. For the purpose of earning the income, the labor will doing any of the work. Such work may be manual or intellectual. Some of the labor will doing as a manually, as a cheap labor for the first example. Some of the persons will be work as by using the intellectual. The work done by an agricultural worker or a cook or a rickshaw puller or a mason is a manual worker. The work of a doctor or a teacher or an engineer is a intellectual work. In short, the labor in economics refers to any type of work performed by a laborer for earning an income. The purpose of earning the income, if the man are doing some of the work, that is called labor. So according to Marshall, the labor represents services provided by the factor labor, which helps in yielding an income to the owner of the labor and power. So next, the characteristics of labor. Some of the characteristics are there in this labor. First, the animate factor of production. The labor is the animate factor of productions. Animate means so the active factor of productions. He can do anything. So what are the innovations are there? It will be bringing by the humans. And if any of the find out, if any of the goods is discovered by the human only. So the labor is called as a animate or activate factor of productions. Next, the labor is an active factor of productions. He will doing more things. Next, the labor implies several types. The labor implies several types. It may be manual or intellectual. Okay, so what are the profession is done by the labor? That is called intellectual work. Some of the cheap labor work is considered as a manual work. The labor is perishable. The labor is perishable means so one day he will die. and their productive power, the productivity of the labor also will be decreased in sort of time. Next, inseparable from the laborer. We can't separate the labor from the laborer. The labor is inseparable from the laborer. If you have some of the knowledge is not separable from you. And if the power to doing some of the work will never separate from the laborer. Next, less mobile. The labor is less mobile between places and occupations. So if the labor want to move from one place to another place, he can do it. Otherwise, he will never do it. He will never mobilize. Next, labor is a means as well as an end. Means already we have studied in these first lessons. The means mean one or the sources as well as end. End mean wants. So the human has more wants to consuming any of the commodities, and in the same time the same human only has to produce whatever they want. So only the labor is a means as well as an end. It is both the cause of production and the consumer of the product. So the wants also created from the heart of the peoples, and all the effort to producing that commodities is undertaken by the same consumers. Okay, so the labor is considered as a means as well as an end. And labor's units are heterogeneous, and labors also differs in ability. So on the basis of ability, the labors also will be different, and the knowledge and their thinking and their intellectual, it will be different. The labor supply determines its wage only. The labor supply determines its reward only. Because if a labor getting the more reward, the supply of labor will be increased. If the wage is very low, the supply of labor is maybe reduced. So normally if you earning more income only, you will go to the work. Like that, if any of the persons didn't get some of the reasonable wage mean, he will never go to the work. So on the basis of the reward, the wage only, the labor supply will be determined. Next, the labor has weak bargaining power. Labor has weak bargaining power, because if he need money, he will go to the work. Otherwise, he will never go to the work. Next of the factor, one of the factor is capital. The capital consists of all kinds of wealth other than free gift of nature. So what we will say the capital mean? The capital consists of all kinds of wealth. All kinds of wealth mean, so all the properties. So if you have the land and furnitures and the vehicles and some of the money or the gold and what are the wealth we have, everything is considered as a capital except the free gift of nature, because the capital is man-made things. Okay, but the land is not made by the humans. Okay, so the capital consists of all kinds of wealth other than free gift of nature. Free gift of nature means, so the land, except the land, what are the properties we have, everything is considered as a wealth. The master says the capital, the bond Bewak defines it as a produced means of productions. Produced means of productions. If you want to produce any of the commodities, we must need of some amount of capital. So the production, the produced means of production. So it is a stock concept. So the capital is a stock concept. Stock concept means it is not movable, but we can use these properties as a stock. All capital is wealth, but all wealth is not capital. Understand? All capital is wealth, but all wealth is not capital. Because the human, the health also one type of the wealth, and the knowledge and the intellectual properties also one of the wealth. So all wealth is not capital, but all capital we can consider as a wealth. So the next, the characteristics of capital. What are the characteristics are there in this capital mean? First, the capital is a man-made factor. Capital is a man-made factors. We can't. The capital only is created by the man. Okay. Next, the mobile between places and persons. The capital is mobilized between the places and persons. So we can easily transferring the capital from one hand to another one of the hand. So we can easily mobile the vehicles or the properties from one place to another one of the place. So the capital is mobile between places and persons. Next, passive factor of productions. The capital also will be like a land. So we can use the capital, but the capital will never doing something. Okay, so the capital also considered as a passive factor of productions. Next, the capital supply is elastic. Capital supply is elastic because simply if the demand of any of the commodity is increased, so the capital also will be increased because the producers want to earning more income. So on the basis of the desire to earning more income, so he will produce more commodities on the basis of the demand. Next, capital's demand is derived demand. Derived demand means, so if any of the demand is there and from the demand only the demand for capital will be arise. For example, why when the capital will be need more mean, so on the basis of demand, if any of the demand for commodity is more, so we have to produce more commodities. Okay, so on the basis of arising the demand for any of the commodity only, the demand for capital also will be arised. So the capital's demand is derived demand. If we need more furniture, so the furniture industries will be providing the more furnitures. So if you want to produce more furnitures, they have to make more capitals. So if there is no demand for that furnitures, the capital will never used to produce that furniture, right? So the capital's demand is derived demand. Next, capital is durable. Okay, so capital always will be existing. It will not be perishables. So the capital is always durable commodities. Here we have to note one thing, the capital may be tangible or intangible items. For example, buildings, plants and machineries, factories, inventories of inputs, warehouses, roads, highways, etc. are tangible capitals. Okay. Next, the example for intangible capitals are investment on advertisement, expenses or training program, intellectual innovations. Everything is also considered as a intangible capitals. So the training program also one of the important things in these labors. Okay, but if there is no training program, the productivity of labor will not be increased or will not be created. So the training program is also provided by the industries, but it will not be tangible and considered as a intangible capital. Next, financial capital. So financial capital means the assets needed by a firm to provide goods and services measured on terms of money value. Next, another one of the factor is organizations. So without organizations, we can't produce anything, not can't. So without organizations, we can't increase the supply of productions. So after producing any of the commodities, the things must be reached in the hands of consumers. For that, one of the organization is needed. The man behind organizing the business is called organizer or the entrepreneur. An organizer is the most important factor of productions because if the organizer is not there, the produced commodities will never reach the hands of consumers. So he represents a special type of labor. The Joseph Schumpeter says that an entrepreneur innovates, coordinates other factors. If you want to bring any of the innovations, so the organizers only have to take the responsibility and the effort also. And he can able to coordinate other factors. If the organizer is not there, we couldn't understand how much amount of capital is needed to produce and how much amount of capital is needed to produce and such as things. So he not only runs the business but bears the risk of business also. If there is no power to bearing the risk of losses, so the no entrepreneur will never achieve. Some of the functions of organizers or organizations. First one is initiation. An organizer is the initiator of the business by considering the situations and availability of resources and planning the entire process of business or productions. If any of the entrepreneur want to establish any of the industries, first he has to take the initial effort. So on the basis of taking the initial effort only, he will achieve and he can able to continue the organizations. So by considering the situation and availability of resources, he should take the plan and the entire process of business productions. Next, innovations. A successful entrepreneur is always an innovator. He introduces new methods in the production process. Normally, we are using the Android mobile now, but before that, so normal mobile only used by all the peoples. But after innovating in the mobile or mobilities, so the demand for that Android mobile is increased. But the entrepreneur must be taking the responsibility to the innovations. A successful entrepreneur is always an innovator. If there is no innovations, there is no success and there is no improvement. He introduces the new methods in the production process. If you are considering in this agricultural sectors, once upon a time every peoples are involving in this agriculture and there is no machineries. But after that, now the more machineries are involved are applied in these agricultural sectors. Next, coordinations. An organizer applies a particular combinations of the factors of production to start and run the business of productions. If you want to produce any of the commodities, we have to arrange the factor of productions as a reasonable ratio. For producing any of the commodities, the organizers only has to arrange the capital and the reasonable number of workers. If the shortage of worker or is the shortage of capital also will bringing the failure of production analysis. Okay, so the organizers only has to coordinate the factor of productions to produce any of the commodities and start and run the business and production organizations. Next is the control and direction and supervisions. An organizer only controls so that nothing prevents the organization from achieving its goal. He has to control all the things in this production process. And he has to direct all the peoples means all the workers, and he has to undertaking the supervisions effort also. He directs the factors to get better result and supervises for the efficient functioning of all production process. And last one of the function of organizer is risk taking or uncertainty bearing. So there are risk taking and uncertainty. So bearing obstacles. there is more obstacles will arise in these business organizations. So one of the obstacle is arising the losses. So as a good organizer must be taking the risk of losses. And the risk may be ensued, but uncertainty cannot be ensued. They reduce the profit. Uncertainty means, so when we are producing any of the commodities, we will predict the demand may be there or may not be there. Okay, but if there is no demand or the demand will not be arised means, so the profit will never come. Okay, students. So today we have studied the functions of all factors of productions, and just to study that same topic as your study portions. If you have any doubt, please ask me. Thank you.